What's up, sports bettors? I have 5 player props to turn $100 into $2,000. And our last play yesterday on Underdog Fantasy was a cash. So we had John Wall over 4 rebounds, Brandon Ayuk under 4.5 receptions, and Jabari Smith over 6.5. I gave this out on Twitter. Again, when I don't have time to make a YouTube video, I'll give out a lot of plays on Twitter. But as I said on Twitter, on Underdog Fantasy, on every sportsbook, I'm not doing anything complicated. In terms of results, it's all based on 2 tools, the OddsJam Screen and the Positive EV Tool. So I'm mainly using the Positive EV Tool just because it's the easiest to use. What this play or what this tool will do, I apologize, is literally just show you profitable plays on Underdog Fantasy, or you can filter for PrizePicks, sportsbooks, whatever sportsbook you're looking at. This video is on Underdog Fantasy. So this is typically the first tool that I use when I'm trying to find 5 profitable picks on Underdog Fantasy for a 5-pick entry. So the first play I went with is Mason Plumlee under 10.5 rebounds. Again, there's really no rocket science going on here. I'm looking for plays with an edge, right? We know on Underdog Fantasy, we've gone through the math a ton of times. For 3-pick and 5-pick entries, you're getting minus 122 implied odds, right? So that's better than 2 picks, where you're getting minus 137. So you're going to notice, and you can comment with any questions, but basically all of my entries on Underdog Fantasy are going to be 3-pick or 5-pick because we're getting the best implied odds, right, at minus 122. So essentially, we're just looking for value on Underdog Fantasy at minus 122 odds. So the first play, the play with the highest profit margin on Underdog Fantasy, and again, it's not like it's super high, but you have to remember these returns are daily. If we have 5 picks, all with a 0.7% profit margin, then the profit margin of our parlay is going to be 5 times, 0.7%. So 3.5%, and that would be a 3.5% return on a daily basis. So you can earn returns, like a lot of people are curious, how do sports betting returns stack up? And what you have to remember is if you have a 4% ROI on your bets, right, a 4% ROI on your Underdog Fantasy NBA bets, you're earning that return every single day, which is why sports betting can be pretty powerful. These returns are daily, right? The stock market is 8% a year. This is 0.67% in a day. So long story short, first play I went with is Plumlee under 10.5 rebounds, Embiid under 10.5, and Tyreek Hill under 6.5 receptions. So 3 unders, right? So we could have called this a day because a 3-pick entry on Underdog Fantasy has minus 122 implied odds, just like a 5-pick. We could have just placed these 3. But what I did is I said, okay, let's see if there's any profitable plays on the screen, which I'll take you through right now, right? But essentially this EV tool, all it does is compare the lines on sportsbooks to those on PrizePicks and Underdog, right? So here you're going to notice FanDuel has Plumlee under 10.5 rebounds at minus 140. Bet Online, a really sharp offshore sportsbook, minus 143. Pinnacle, the sharpest bookmaker in the world, the same as the OddsJam column, you'll notice these columns are always the same, they're pricing this at minus 175. So we have 1, 2, 3, right? PrizePicks and Underdog are fantasy sites. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sports books, all telling us that the under for Plumlee should be heavily favored, right? The under should be the favored outcome, which is why sportsbooks are juicing lines, towards the under. So we're just looking for value, right? When the sharpest bookmaker, Pinnacle, is pricing something at minus 175, and you can get it at minus 122 in your Underdog Fantasy entry, that's a pretty good indication that's a play you want to be on, a play with an edge. So this is the first one I locked in. And then it's the same strategy for Embiid, take your gut out of sports betting. These sports books invest hundreds of millions of dollars in their ability to set lines, right? And sports betting is a market. It's based on supply and demand. Odds reflect the opinions of every sports bettor. You know, there's millions of people betting on the NBA every night. That all of their action is reflected in the odds. You know, if everybody starts piling money on Embiid under 10.5 rebounds, these lines are going to move from minus 140 to minus 180, right? It's supply and demand. Just like the stock market, people buy a stock, it goes up. It's no different in sports betting. Sports books are reflecting the opinions of all bettors in the market and moving around odds to try to keep everything balanced and make their spread, which is called the vig. You know, if you think about a car dealer, the car dealer buys a car for $10,000, they sell it for $15,000. They make their spread. That's how sports books work. Sports books are just moving around odds due to supply and demand. More action starts coming in on the Sixers, they move lines towards the Sixers. Lines start coming in, or action starts coming in on the Warriors, they move lines towards the Warriors. They're just slowly moving around lines to balance supply and demand and kind of make their spread. So basically, you know, the easiest strategy for making money off Underdog Fantasy is you just take these picks in bold and you just parlay them together once you have 3 of them. So you could have gone with Plumlee under, Embiid under, and Tyreek Hill under. Just following the data, following the math, looking for those soft spots on Underdog Fantasy. You know, we don't need, you know, there's probably 10,000 betting lines on Underdog. You don't need a bet on every game, right? You don't need a bet on a specific game that you want to watch. You don't need a bet on the World Cup final, right? You want to make money. So all you need is, out of these tens of thousands of betting lines on Underdog, you just need 3 of them to be good at minus 122 odds. Because that's how Underdog Fantasy works, right? They're giving you minus 122 juice on 3-pick and 5-pick entries, so you just need to find 3 spots where sportsbooks are telling you, hey, you're getting incredible value on Underdog at minus 122, lock that bad boy in. Which we can see with this Embiid under as well, right? You know, all these sportsbooks set lines independently, and you can see, you know, for Embiid, there's really no disagreement. Here, Pinnacle, the sharpest bookmaker in the world, they are very aggressive on Plumlee under 10.5 rebounds. They have this minus 175, which is 30 cents away from Bet Online. So we're kind of using all these sports books, you know, treating them as data points, trying to figure out if we like a bet. Whereas here, there's complete agreement in the market. Every sports book is pricing this minus 140 to minus 148. So we have really high confidence. You know, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sports books all telling us, yo, this should be minus 145-ish. We're getting it minus 122. Absolute no-brainer. That's a play you want to be on. So I went with these 3 plays. Then I also took Ryan O'Reilly under 2 shots on goal. So you can see here, you know, the Positive EV tool is nice because it lets you compare lines set at the same level. So here you can see like Pinnacle, you know, they're Plumlee over under 10.5 boards, which is the same as Underdog. Like all these books are setting things at the same line. So all the EV tool does is compare the odds and point out big discrepancies, right? So on Underdog, the biggest discrepancy is Plumlee under 10.5 rebounds at minus 122 odds, which makes sense considering the sharpest bookmaker in the world is pricing this at minus 175. Like, don't overcomplicate sports betting. You're an investor, you're like a day trader, you're looking for value, you're moving quick, moving fast to get in on great lines. Sharpest sports book in the world is telling you this should be minus 175. You're getting it minus 122, you know, go bet it. So if you want to take out the math, we have a bunch of videos explaining how to back out your profit margin, calculate EV, stuff like that. You can really dig into the math behind sports betting on the OddsJam YouTube, or you can just like, you know, rationalize it and think about it, you know, kind of the way I do, which is you have 1, 2, 3, you know, 4, 5, 6 sports books all telling you this should be priced minus 135 to minus 175, and the sharpest bookmaker in the world has this minus 175, so it seems pretty dang good at minus 122. Now, why the screen is useful is it lets you compare lines set at different levels. So here you'll notice for Ryan O'Reilly, his player shots total is set at an over-under of 2. All the sports books have him at 1.5. Granted, the sportsbooks have him over 1.5 juice towards the over, but you can see on Barstool, it's only minus 134 juice towards the over. On FanDuel, they're a little more aggressive on the over. So, this is how you make money sports betting. You look at all the data in the market, right? You treat OddsJam like your Bloomberg terminal, and you're like, okay, there's millions of odds updating in the market. All these sportsbooks try to set lines independently. So the easiest path for me to make money and find value, find an edge, is look for these market inefficiencies, right? So we're getting Ryan O'Reilly under 2 shots on goal, which seems great because if he has 2 shots on goal, we're going to push. Anyone who bets his under 1.5 on the sportsbook would lose if he has 2 shots on goal. So 2 versus 1.5 is a huge deal. This isn't an NBA point total where we're looking at 220 versus 220 half. Like Ryan O'Reilly, his distribution is centered around 1.5 shots on goal. Like that's a pretty low line. In most games, this guy has 0, 1, 2, or 3 shots on goal. So being able to push when he has exactly 2 shots on goal as opposed to lose like everyone on the sportsbook, right? That's a big jump. So being able to get under 2 is a huge deal. So that's the first play I locked in. And then I also ended up taking, if we can end up finding it, so I typically just scan and look for the biggest discrepancies, here's another one, Barzell. Over 2 is what I took. You can see Barstool, Bet Rivers, they have over 2.5 shots on goal favored. Minus 130, we can get over 2 at minus 122 juice. DraftKings has the over 2.5 shots on goal at minus 105. So again, being able to get over 2 where we're pushing, if Barzell has 2 shots on goal, anyone who bets on the sportsbook over 2.5 will lose. So we're finding value, we're finding an edge. And again, the screen is very useful, unlike the EV tool, because it lets us compare lines set at different levels, 2 versus 2.5, right? So hopefully this video was helpful. Let's make money.